Kyle here from All Media Reviews, here to do Albums of the Year, rough draft night for 1993. I can show a couple things. I went to the Twins game, it was Prince night at the Twins game last night. They played a lot of music, even some more deeper track, like deeper relatively. They didn't play a lot like Bambi or I'm Yours or Computer Blue, but it was the 40th anniversary of Purple Rain. So it's kind of cool. People were dressed up, and then the first, like, I don't know, 5,000 fans got these hats, which were cool. They have the Prince symbol. And they've been doing, like, a Prince night ever since he passed away, I think, for the last, like, 8 years. So some people have, like, jerseys and all this other stuff. But I also have a Dredge hat that I'm going to be getting in, because Dredge just put stuff on sale last week. But I was wearing my two Kevin Thud hats. Actually, I brought this one with, but I was wearing this one. I'm wearing both of them. But anyway, I don't collect hats as much as I used to, but yeah, I mean, the baseball stuff. New release of the December's album came out. I haven't heard it yet. I'm probably going to go see Dada later tonight, if I can manage to get a seat without having to pay for 2 tickets. And there are 2 tickets that are trying to resell. I can't buy it online anyway, long story. But they're having Florida play after the Twins game, though. It's just weird tonight down there. But yeah, and then, like, next week is Pepe Deluxe, of course, and the week after is The Warning, new releases. And then we're planning on doing in July sometime, doing the Albums of the Year mid-season. I gotta look at the date again on that. But yeah, okay. Mid-season Albums of the Year. It's gonna be sometime mid-July. So anyway, on to 1993. I mean, I didn't get to do as much research on this as I would have liked. So that's why someday, maybe 2025, 2026, I want to redo these and it'll be more fully accurate. But this is more almost like a documentation, of course, for a lot of these if I redo them. So starting out, the ones I aren't on my list, but it's kind of going back, like a lot of these, I have Stockabo, who had the album Supermarket, which has the song Here We Go, which was on Beavis, also Down the Drain. They were like a Swedish band that did pop and sort of combining hip-hop and a little bit like Nina Cherry in some ways, but they were more specifically Swedish. But anyway, Stereo, I think it was their debut album, might have been. Stereo Lab, a band that I've seen more and more, and I've listened to some of their music. The Pepe Deluxe comparison, Pepe Deluxe were parts of their music, and I've known about them for a long time. The hipsters like them, college radio, etc. But their album Transient Random Noise Burst with announcements is one of the 2 or 3 bolded records they have. I think one of the members passed away, unfortunately, maybe the female singer, but they're probably a band I could get more into, but it sort of has its sort of limitations. But I think I could like them more than Bruno Pernadas with the Pepe Deluxe comparisons and stuff. Dissection, the sort of black metal, black death metal band. The Somber Lane, their debut album came out that year. Depeche Mode's Songs of Faith and Devotion, which had a few hits, but I don't know if I know these. I think I probably do. The 3 hits: I Feel You, Walking in My Shoes, which is not the Kevin Gilbert NRG. Kevin has a song with the same name, and In Your Room. But anyway, it's the one that's black with purple. I'll put it in obviously the collage over here, with little purple lettering and stuff like that. But Carcass, Heartwork, for Carcass's catalog in terms of, like early, it was like grindcore and death metal. That's their sort of signature, most well-known record. I've always known when I started getting into extreme metal 17 years ago about, it's like, well, what album from Carcass should I get? And it's like, I've gotten some stupid arguments of, yeah, Carcass has their prog influence because they're technical. Janet Jackson's Janet, which has If and That's the Way Love Goes. Liz Phair, an artist, a female musician that my wife really likes. I don't think she has the vinyl over there, but probably her most well-known album, Exile to Guyville, came out in 93. And then Tool's Undertow. I don't know if I'm going to be... Maybe I should just mention them. Like, I didn't include this clue, never mind. There's the Smashing Pumpkins Siamese Dream I didn't even have on this list. I'm not a fan of Tool, so I'm not going to rank it. I don't have reason to, like, pursue ranking at this point. And the same goes for, like, a lot of those bands. So, even though it's noteworthy, that was their debut album, I believe, Undertow from Tool. So, alright, and there's an album that I didn't get a lot to listen to, but I've listened to many years ago. Orphan Land's The Beloved's Cry, which is their debut like EP at number 30. I'm just going to go through some of these because I just don't have a lot to add about them. I just know of them by reputation. Some of them are just... I'll add more details on some of them, of course, but not a lot, not all of them. No Man, I believe this is the debut record from No Man. Steven Wilson and Tim Bonus, Album Years Podcast now, of course. But their debut record, Love Blows and Love Cries, A Confession. Which, the weird thing is there was another band called No Man, and I looked it up and it was weird. They're very Bowie influenced, and some of No Man stuff you could say almost sounds like No Man, but they're not spelled with a dash. So I wasn't even sure if this was actually a No Man album, but it's not like Porcupine Tree really. But I mean, at one point they thought, Steven and Tim thought that this was going to be the main musical pursuit, and could have had the most accessibility. Not Porcupine Tree, but among Steven Wilson's work. But anyway, I mean, I've listened to this maybe 4 or 5 times, and the sticker on this says 2005. That's such it was around the Deadwing era that I bought this. So anyway, No Man's Love Blows and Love Cries. I have 1 or 2 other No Man albums. They have a couple of songs I like, but I've never been able to fully find the No Man I love, unfortunately. But that's number 29. 28, probably just based on the fact he's on it, but I'm not putting it higher. Sheryl Crow's Tuesday Night Music Club. Yeah, I mean, of course, Kevin Gilbert, Bill Bottrell, David Burwald, a lot of these guys that played with Kevin were on this. It has, of course, All I Want to Do, which was the biggest hit, but of course, Leaving Las Vegas, Strong Enough. A lot of hits, and the fact it's Cheryl, but the fact it also is Kevin, and I've said for the longest time, the real holy grail of the music that's never been released, at least some of it, from Kevin Gilbert, that Kevin Gilbert was involved with, would be a lot of the stuff that was recorded that didn't come out, that maybe even Kevin did vocals on. But yeah, I mean, it's a decent record. It has a stigma still, as much as I'm at peace with everything with Sheryl Crow, unlike some people in the Kevin Gilbert community, the fan community. But I don't know. I think actually some of Cheryl's work after it were better in some ways. They're more kind of adventurous in some ways, even though Kevin wasn't involved. But yeah, I mean, you could say that All I Want to Do sounds like a song that could have been on Thud easily. Anyway, number 28, Tuesday Night Music Club. Number 27, Pearl Jam's Verses, which I believe I did have on CD. So I remember going to Madison the fall of '93 and buying it, to go visit my brother. He was a freshman at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I was like, I'm not that into Pearl Jam. I know he liked Pearl Jam, but I was kind of trying to get into them. And that album had a few hits like Daughter, Animal, and Rearview Mirror I liked, but that is more or less the extent of my fandom with Pearl Jam. Even though I'll say that I haven't really spent a lot of time with their other records. Some people swear by Vitology and some of the other records, but anyway, number 27, Pearl Jam. I mean, the King's X influence and all that stuff. Number 26, prog metal band that a lot of people loved, talked about on the Mike Portnoy years ago. I haven't listened to this in a long time, but I just know it from name and listen to it. The Prog Power USA community loves Damn the Machine, the self-titled album. So I can't really elaborate. It was prog metal. It didn't sound exactly like Dream Theater, though. I think it was more in the Queensryche vein, but I think the singer was a little different. But, I do revisitation in the next few years of this year. That record may move up and down. I didn't get a chance to check it out. I'm not sure if it's even on Spotify. It probably is on YouTube, though. But anyway, Damn the Machine, number 26. Number 25, I had this CD. I might still somewhere. It's not the Alan Parsons Project, but it's Alan Parsons himself. Try Anything Once, where the guys in the picture are upside down, like they're hanging or whatever. I got this from BMG Music Club. It was just sent to me, because I liked, Pink Floyd or whatever. I thought it was this is pretty much Pink Floyd ripoff, but listened to it back in the day, and I rated and rate your music, but I can't tell you what were the hits. I didn't even get a chance to write that down. So that's number 25. Number 24, Duran Duran's. Look at the camera here is slanted. I haven't done a Kleenex box. Apologies. Duran Duran's. It's called Well, I don't know if it's a self-titled. No, it's not, because they have the self-titled album, but it's known as the Wedding Album. I can't remember, but it has the hit "Ordinary World." I worked at Sam Goody at the Mall of America the summer of 1993. I met the guys from Peter, Paul, and Mary, the guys from Kiss. But we would play stuff like Queensryche's Empire, that video collection they had, which came out that year. And that album and a few others, one or two others that are on this list. That album was played frequently, that song specifically. And it still sort of resonated, but that's like Duran Duran's last big hit, which is weird. But anyway, number 24. I know Duran Duran fans probably think this album is a lot more than just that one song. It probably is, but I haven't revisited it since then. But I put it at number 24. Number 23, Primus's Pork Soda, who I saw open for Rush. That would have been April, the day that Kurt Cobain died, announced he died. April of 94. I think of it most for the song My Name is Mud. I had a cassette tape that was dubbed from a friend of mine. I got a copy of that. It's like, this is Primus. They're open for Rush. They don't really have guitars. It's bass, and they're kind of quirky and funny, trying to be funny. But My Name is Mud, of course, was the one that I think of the most for it. And you know, that groove. So that's number 23, if I'm doing this right. 20. Actually, it's 24. I'm off by one again. I'm off by one because I added a few here. So number 20. That was 24. So Primus and Duran Duran. Number 23. I put this in here just from revisiting some of it the other day. Cry of Love. Their album. I think it's called Brother. It's not. You know, I didn't write the name down. Shoot. But it featured two really big hits. Peace Pipe and Highway Jones. My wife was saying that the vocalist sounded like Billy Squier. I don't have any Billy Squier on these lists. I probably should, but because I like some Billy Squier. But that Peace Pipe, In the Name of God, Turn Down the Sacred Ground, that line. But yeah, I mean, they were an interesting band. I remember seeing their CDs frequently at Cheapo. You'd flip through Cry of Love, and they were like sort of a blues rock band, kind of like Black Crowes. The Black blues rock was kind of all the rage at that point. The Zeppelin and the Black Sabbath and you know, the Eric Clapton, all those the classic rock, blues rock influence were showing up in the 90s, and Cry of Love were one of them. That band, not Social Distortion, but they had a name something like that. I'll think of it later probably. But was one of those other bands I was thinking of that I thought they had the name Distortion. Hey, where's a band called Social Distortion? That's not the band I'm thinking of, though. Anyway, that sort of very animated, energetic blues rock. But Cry of Love was one of those bands. Again, I never bought their CDs. I did two and two together. Yeah, that's the band that they would play at KQ would play, and some of the other radio stations played frequently. Anyway, number 23. Number 22, Zooropa from U2. An album I probably would revisit fully, which I wasn't able to. I would rate higher, but it features the title track, the song "Numb," which was kind of like, it wasn't a rap, but it was do 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 do. It was like Bono was talking, or The Edge is talking. Song "Lemon" was a minor hit too. It to me was like, it wasn't leftovers from Achtung Baby, but it was like doing some similar but some different things from Achtung Baby, but not quite as well. Although I like sort of the whole purple. I don't know if they're influenced by Prince, the purple approach, the purple color scheme, and you know. It was a different kind of music. You can't say it's. I mean, you can't say they were trying to do some different things on it. Anyway, number 22, U2 Zooropa. Probably could go a little higher in retrospect. We're 21. All right, so I have a copy of this. I remember when I was trying to think about getting into this band many years ago. This is the one I always wanted because I just based on the title. But you know, I didn't get a chance to listen to it. I have the CD. Voivod's The Outer Limits, which I think this came with like a pair of like a 3D glasses or something. Or there was a 3D connection with this, but you know, and this is their like approach to sci-fi. I know this was not as metal, but you know, this has their cover of the Nile song from Pink Floyd. I remember that was another part of it. Jack Luminous. I know there's someone who goes by that screen name online, but yeah. It's not as good, I don't think, as the last record, Angel Rat, that Terry Brown produced, because I don't think Terry Brown produced this thing. But at the same time, they're coming here, actually, Voivod, but I'm not going to be going to see them. Not with Vector, but yeah, it's a record that probably could go up a little bit, but for what it is, it was okay. I don't hate this record. I probably would put it above like a couple of records in the 80s, the mid-80s, so The Outer Limits from Voivod, number 20, whatever that, 21. Number 20, okay, here's an obscure name, just talking about Damn the Machine. Another prog metal, underground cult, you know, prog metal scene band. The first of a few records I'm going to be including on some of these lists probably. Without Warning, I think they're from New York. Making Time, the debut album. There's definitely a Dream Theater influence, everything like prog metal, like Images and Words that come out the year before, but this one, a lot of their albums had Japanese imports and stuff. That was right. It was a couple years after this I got this, and I've heard about this band. The next one they released, but I'll say that the vocalist doesn't sound like James LaBrie. He doesn't sound like Geddy Lee. He's got a very unusual style. He's kind of a gruff sounding, but it's not screaming or it's not death metal. It's not like Mike Patton exactly. He has I think his name is Jack Boletta, Ted Berger, the members of this band. They were like the first quote unquote prog metal band I listened to outside of Dream Theater, really. Because I hadn't even listened to Queensryche when I first got into them. It's like Queensryche, maybe only knew a few songs, but some of the Fate's Warning, I was around the same time, but it's like, oh, this band needs my support, and they're not bad. The title track is one of my favorites on here. No Guarantees, that's another one. That phrase is always brought up. Rain, Tale of Years, Lonely Voices. They're good. I mean, they have keyboards, and they're doing sort of progressive. You could call it metal with time signatures, you know, odd time signatures, but again, they're not. The songs aren't epic, and they don't noodle as much as Dream Theater actually. They do a little bit, but it's not. It's just you could say, well, this is a debut album, and they're kind of finding their sound, and I don't know. I mean, I think they have their limitations, but among quote unquote prog metal, the early prog metal in the '90s, this band was one of the better bands. You could put Tiles, even though Tiles wasn't really prog metal, but Tiles and some of these other bands that I'll be talking about. Without Warning were always a band I've always appreciated to a degree. I never became obsessed with them. I'm like, yeah, they're a good band. I want to buy their new album. And they were kind of a savior for me to like avoid, you know, just listening to old music. I need some new music besides Dream Theater. Okay, what about Without Warning? At the record shows I used to go to, and this Impulse company eventually moved to Illinois, but that's where I heard about Without Warning. So that's number 20. Number 19, Sting's 10 Summoner's Tales, and I was vowing I was going to like revisit this to see how it compares to the three previous Sting albums. I didn't get around to really doing that. It has 2 hits, of course. Fields of Gold is still like a staple among like Light FM and adult contemporary. It's not a bad song. I don't consider it as saccharine as some stuff, but it's been a little overplayed. And then If I Ever Lose My Faith in You. I mean, I remember I saw him on this tour. That was like the second concert I ever saw. He did some of the Police stuff, of course, including Synchronicity too. I'm kind of concluding that Sting is a better singles artist than he is an albums artist, even though he's an artiste and he's tried to do different things, an album of Lute and all this stuff. But anyway, number 19, 10 Summer's Tales, could go up depending on, I think he still might have had Branford because he used some sax on this, but of course, Gordon Sumner, that's the name with a Sumner, that Gordon Sumner is his real name. But number 18, another solo artist, which I didn't have really many of. That would be in revisiting these years. I would want to go back to visit some of his. I know several of his singles. Robert Plant's Fate of Nations, which I have the 29 Palms single somewhere like over there. That was another song that we played when I was at Sam Goody that summer of '93. But it has the Calling to You and a couple others, but I didn't get a chance to revisit the whole thing. But I remember listening to this album probably about 15 years ago and liking it, but I was thinking I was going to like it more than I did. But he has several 80s albums that I probably, he had singles like In the Mood and trying to think of some of the other ones. But anyway, Robert Plant, Fate of Nations, an album that could go higher potentially with more work, but for now it's number 18. Number 17, I had a copy of the CD, and it was in one of my small case Logic books, and it's not. I didn't find it I'll probably find it later and show it in a later video. It's Pat Metheny's live album, The Road to You, recorded live in Europe, which was supporting, his late 80s, early 90s stuff, the album that I've got over here, but I know I bought it because I wanted to get a good live, like more recent Pat Metheny album. But, he's a Pat Metheny and Pat Metheny group. I think this is actually a Pat Metheny album. Letters from Home, is it? Yeah. Yeah, cause this came out this was on my 89 or 89 list. I don't know if it was supporting this. He played some of the stuff. I played some of the early stuff. He played some of the First Circle stuff. I can't remember. I remember liking like Last Train Home. I think was not Last Train or First Train Home. There's Imogen Heap's got a song called like Last Train Home, but yeah, it's the blue artwork, blue kind of bluish, and it's like a road on the road kind of thing with Pat Metheny. Again, splitting hairs, but I have it at number 17. I wish I could find it. I'll find it someday. I'll find it someday soon. So, number 16, Anecdoton's V-Mod, which has the first song, Carillia, I like. And I don't have this CD. I saw Anecdoton at Nearfest in 2000. I like them. I bought their second one, Nucleus, I think it is. So, be able to show that on that when the video comes up for that in a couple years. But, a lot of people, it's big. They were like a King Crimson tribute band initially. There's the use of Mellotron especially is very Crimson-y. So, anyway, I can't elaborate a ton on this, but I've listened to this when I listened to them. That was close to 20 years ago. The last time I probably listened to them. They had that album Gravity and some other ones, but Gravity or Gravity of Light or whatever it's called. But they're Swedish, I believe. But Anecdoton, number 16, V-Mod. Alright, so now we get into the top 15, and I think I have physicals for most of these albums. So, number 15, Tears for Fears, Elemental, which this is the first album of a couple albums that after Kurt Smith left the band, then he later rejoined, but it has the hit Break It Down Again. That was a big hit. They still play it. I don't think Kurt has a problem playing that album. I don't have it on CD or vinyl, of course, but I don't have any Tears for Fears yet on vinyl, sadly. But it has some other songs. I wrote a bunch, and I was able to revisit this one at least. But yeah, Roland's featured. You have, I think Guy Pratt's on one or two songs. I wrote that down. This doesn't want to go back in. This cassette. Let's see. The title track is very atmospheric, with a little funky groove. World instruments. I mean, it's a follow-up to Seeds of Love, which use a lot of ethnic or world instruments. Smooth moments. Mr. Pessimist is a highlight for that features Guy Pratt on bass, but very atmospheric and proggy, and it's like piano and electronics. Fish Out of Water, Power, it's very dreamy, gets jazzy in the second half. There's some upright bass and piano and flute, and then Goodnight Song. The lyrics are pretty sad. I don't know at this point. It was kind of weird because he'd been with Kurt for like over a decade, and then suddenly he's on his own. But that line, but nothing ever changes, it's kind of sad, like melancholy, and somebody's like, we're trying to change things and nothing ever changes, nothing's ever going to change for me, I don't know, it had to be kind of frustrating, it's like, well, I'm all on my own, but I do prefer his voice, although there's one singer in here, and it's not Guy Pratt, I don't think, that sounds a little bit like Kurt, and I thought I looked it up, John Baker, and also you have Julian Orzabal, it's Roland's brother, so, but anyway. Tears for Fears, Elemental. Of course, they had the record that followed it. I'll have to include that Realm of the King of Spain or whatever it's called. But and then he has a solo record. Also that we're gonna see more Tears for Fears on these lists coming in the future. So, number 14, the second sort of proper. I didn't have Voyage 34 on my list. There was one or two other records on the 92 list I didn't include that Christian mentioned. And I wrote it down. What am I thinking here? Anglegar's Hybris was one I missed. And then Amused to Death from Roger Waters. But Voyage 34. But Voyage 34 was just like the EP. I think of the full version, which came out like in 2004. I don't think I'm going to have that necessarily on my 2004 list. I don't know. But this is Up the Downstairs, though. I consider basically the second proper full-length album from Porcupine Tree. So Stephen Wilson released the first No Man album and also this. And while I'm sort of lukewarm. Some people don't like my friend Josh from Heavy Debriefing doesn't like the early space rock Porcupine Tree. I like it for what it is. It's very different at points, although some of the guitar riffs are heavy on this. And so to say they were not metal until Absentia and all that stuff, or even like Lightbulb Sun with Hate Song or whatever, isn't necessarily true. He was still using guitar riffs. He was influenced by Megadeth and Metallica and some of his other metal bands, Maiden, probably Priest, but Monuments Burning's one of the highlights. I mean, the thing is, on Spotify, it's just 4 tracks, but then the track list on here is, like you can see, is different. I know that Burning Sky is one that they played live, but it's kind of a trip. I mean, the songs kind of the use of samples always gets me. So I don't dislike any Porcupine Tree albums really, even some of the ones I rate lower, and especially the early stuff because they use samples. I always like they never overdo the samples. It doesn't get too political or too drug in your face sound clips, but it's enough to sort of talking about hallucinations and stuff like that, and that's the reason why I continue to appreciate it. But I've never got attached. It's got to be the right mood. But yeah, the title track has some heavy riffs specifically among other parts. So that's number 14, Up the Downstair from Up the Downstair. I'm going up the downstair up. Yeah, go figure. The use of chemicals, the use of drugs or whatever, LSD. Number 14. Number 13. Okay, so now we're gonna get a few live albums showing up here. Dream Theater's Live at the Marquee, which, of course, when I was discovering Dream Theater, I was obsessed with them. All I had was Images and Words, When Dream and Day Unite, and Awake, which I was struggling with. But, of course, I had, like, Majesty demo, and then I had some bootlegs. But this is the only official live. It was just an EP, but Live at the Marquee. Of course, it has Bombay Vindaloo, which is just a jam. It also has The Another Hand, The Killing Hand Suite. Mostly songs from When Dream and Day Unite. It has Metropolis, and Pull Me Under, and Surrounded, so it's like 50-50, but, yeah, I've always liked, I mean, I know Labrie was doing his screeching and stuff, his voice didn't sound bad, of course, this has Kevin Moore. In fact, this might be the only live album they have with Kevin Moore, now thinking about it, other than some of the official bootlegs that came out later, but, yeah, Live at the Marquee, which is in England, I believe, so came out, so that's Dream Theater's Live at the Marquee, number 13, it was 1995 when I was listening to that a few years later. And of course, they have the big medley on the Change of Seasons, but that was even with Kevin Moore. So, number 12, we see an album, again, I've gotten some mileage of, but it's a mood record, just like, some of these other records, like, I don't know, some of these records are on here, like Zooropa or Pat Metheny, what's the other one I was kind of saying, or No Man, but it's Jim Matheos' debut solo album, which is new agey, First Impressions, which I know there was like they may have used the violinist from Kansas. There was a Kansas influence, because Jim Matheos is a big Kansas fan. I think it was either this one or the next one, which I have also on CD. He had the violinist, was it Robbie Steinhardt, or maybe it was, well, maybe not. Mr. Mom Meteor, Tracy Vera, before, Joey Vera was actually in Fates Warning. Maybe not. All I know is in the book it talked about, it's Eugene Friesen. Okay, he plays cello. No, Charlie Bizharat is the violinist. But all I know is he was there's a Kansas influence, the arrangement, although it's just instrumental music and it's kind of new agey. Not necessarily my favorite of his solo records, but it's like he's been releasing so much sort of solo-ish work of the last 30 years. I have to be in the top 5 because I'm not that attached to stuff outside of Fates Warning and really like OSI and John Arch Matheos. So, but yeah, First Impressions, as a Fates Warning fan, I was like, I have to get this. 95, 96, 97, whenever I got it, it's like Jim Matheos' solo album, of course I'll get it. And it's nice. It's not too long. It's 9 tracks. Very like seasonal, very wintry. Silent Snow, Secret Snow is the last track. Winter's Thaw is the second track. Yeah, Pause for Pause. It's a departure from Fates Warning. There's nothing rock or metal really about it. It's acoustic, mostly acoustic guitar, cello, and violin, but it's great. So, it's great for what it is, at least. Number 12, Jim Matheos' First Impressions, first solo album. Number 11, now we see another solo album. Of course, this is the box set vinyl, which includes a lot more to it. Came on the sort of Legacy and Deluxe edition on CD I got, and then later I have. But Jeff Buckley's Live at Chennai, which he has a couple of sort of renowned live albums. He's got probably like a dozen. Some of them come for Record Store Day. But this is 1A and 1B. The Mystery White Boy would be the other one. But the original had just like 6 songs on it. And he hadn't released a solo album at this point. He'd done the I don't think I had the Gary Lucas thing that I got in vinyl. That was this year or the next year. But it does feature, among others, I mean, stuff that pre-Grace stuff, of course. Mojo Pin, Grace, the title track. I want to say Eternal Life. Yep, I should know Grace off the top of my head. There's a lot of monologue and dialogue. He's doing into like a Kurt Cobain, grungy kind of thing. He started doing, Smells Like Teen Spirit at one point, but he does do Night Flight from Zeppelin, which I appreciate. Of course, Jeff would say, well, he's a combination of Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, the guitarist and singer. But Je ne connais pas la fin. I mean, one of these songs is also but that's like an Edith Piaf song. But one of these songs, I think, is where you cover Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. I want to say Sweet Thing or... Well, I mean, a percentage of Jeff Buckley's Grace, and then on the record after were covers, but there were different versions. Unforgiven, which basically became Last Goodbyes on here, and I mean it's raw because it's really just him, but it's great to think how well Winoni became after he passed away, but he had the whole shadow of his father's legacy throughout his whole life as a musician. But it's still good if you're a Jeff Buckley fan. It's kind of a no-brainer. If you like hearing where music comes from and goes. It's not like demos. It's just we're playing some of the stuff that in covers too, and some of the dialogue is pretty funny. So yeah, I'm a Jeff Buckley fanboy, so I had to put this on this list. And it's Chennai, the famous venue. I know Jimmy Nichols played. A lot of people have played there in New York, or it's in New York, I believe. I don't know which borough, but number 11. Okay, the top 10. All right, what happened to? Oh yeah, sorry. I have my CD I didn't grab, but it's Saigon Kicks Water, which, truth be, I'm going through their catalog now, and I would probably rank this if I'm ranking I consider their 4 proper albums. There's the Bastards album, which this would be probably last, but it's still got a lot of good songs on it. That kind of speaks to the quality. I mean, the debut album, the 2 albums I have on vinyl are my least 2 favorites. The 2 that I'm missing on vinyl from the 90s, are probably my favorites, but it has the song. The other thing that's notable, of course, Matt Kramer leaves after the last album, Lizard, and the guitarist Jason Bieler basically takes over the vocal duties, which he has a slightly similar voice, but not identical. If you listen to their music enough, you can just start to distinguish between the 2 of them. But the title track is kind of proggy, it's kind of trippy. They do a cover of Space Oddity from Bowie, which is great. I mean, that's their most played song on Spotify, which is kind of sad, but I understand why, because while it's not identical, I mean, it's close. They have a little bit of Jason's spin on it. It gets a little heavy toward the end. That sort of hair metal thrashy guitar parts. But the song Water has these gospel vocal sections, really Middle Eastern. Kind of like Within You Without You from U2, or Within Without You from U2. Within You Without You from the Beatles, or A Few Words for the Dead from Marillion would do later with a djembe, kind of mystical. Fields of Rape, believe it or not, is one of the song titles on this. Melodically, I like it. It's an odd lyric. The line, "We got to change these fields of rape." I mean, I don't know if it's sort of like an anti-rape, sort of feminist, supportive song lyric, but it's a weird title. But then there's On and On, which is really poppy, and Sentimental Girl, which is both jazzy and catchy. There's a harmon mute and some jazz guitar. Then When You're Mine, the last 2 songs, When You're Mine, they reprise it. When You're Mine is the second to last track, and then they bring that back in the reprise, which is great. So, I mean, I'd say I like more than half this record, but, I think it was more notable with Jason, what he would do without Matt Kramer's services on the next record. But, yeah, good record, Water. That's why it's number 10. I don't know if I do this again, if it will go quite that high, but it kind of speaks to, the quality of, Saigon Kicks catalog for me. Number 9... albums that were better than it, but the first sort of record that came out after I became a fan, Rush. This is Counterparts. I still don't have the vinyl, of course, but summer of '93, this came out while I was working at Sam Goody, I want to say, or we knew it was going to be coming. I heard about it. The peak of my Rush fandom, the summer of '93. I mean, it has my favorites on this. Alien Shore is the one who's really underrated. I think that song's a gem. Double Agent. Nobody's Hero, about their friend who's LGBTQ, kind of the mistreatment or misperception, the social issues with it. But melodically, it's a very nice melodic, sad ballad that Rush did. Animate, energetic, Stick It Out is heavy. It's heavier than Roll the Bones. It's heavier than pretty much any record since maybe even Grace Under Pressure, or even going back to even the prog stuff, really. There was way more emphasis on the guitars and very little keyboards on here. Well, Leave That Thing Alone was a fun instrumental. Cold Fire, they always did the little country joke when they go into that. I like Cold Fire. Yeah, a lot of these songs are more poppy. They're not as proggy, but they still work. Between Sun and Moon is kind of trippy at points. Geddy's vocals are deeper. Really, there's a big difference. You could tell Geddy's vocals were going down an octave with a lot of this at this point, and basically at this point to the end of their career, the last album they released. But I like Counterparts a lot. It's got great energy. Oh, and Cut to the Chase, which was a go-to when I was in college. We were having stereo wars. That song is super heavy and energetic. They would do, was it Ceiling Unlimited, that kind of followed up, that also was just crazy Alex guitar riffs. So, I mean, I really appreciate this. I think I probably prefer it over Roll the Bones now. I didn't used to. But I don't like it more than any of the 80s albums still, even though I do like it. You know, I'm a Rush fanboy, but I know people that would probably put it higher than number 8. So, number 9, rather. Number 8, the first of probably a few records from this band will be seen. Speaking of Canadian, we got a couple Canadian artists on this list now. The debut album from I Mother Earth, Dig, which this is, yeah. And I have the CD single for Levitate. This band's drummer is an animal. He's amazing. He's just fantastic. If you've never heard I Mother Earth and you like drums, you like guys who can really play drums like Animal from the Muppets, or, you know, you name your crazy drummer who can play like polyrhythms in their sleep. I wrote his name down. I should know it. What the hell is his name? I thought Christian Tana. That guy's fantastic. This also features, the first couple records features the singer, speaking of Rush, his name is Edwin something for his last name, but Edwin, which he would actually sing on Alex Lifeson's album Victor. But the song So Gently We Go is tour de force, unbelievably sad, sort of power ballad, but it gets kind of heavy and sort of riffy climax at the end. When I've got into I Mother Earth, they opened for Dream Theater. They were here when I didn't know who they were. But actually, they opened at the old Mirage Club off Hiawatha 55. But I never got to see them. They were touring with Tea Party for the 4th or 5th time in their career in Winnipeg. But it would have cost me a lot of money just to go across the border, and it's like a 15-hour drive. But I still want to see them someday. But super tight drum fill. Songs like Levitate, Rain Will Fall, Lost My America, No One. Just crazy drum with the groove. The energy is just off the chart. I mean, it's sort of grungy, but it's also proggy. And the song Basketball is another one. If you want an energy record, I Mother Earth's Dig, and most of the I Mother Earth albums would qualify. But yeah, I really like. McPartner is a fan of them, of course, that they opened for Dream Theater. So, and I think they might have opened for Rush at one point too, because obviously from Canada it kind of helped. So number 8, and I think Daniel Victor from Neverwin One Lights is a fan because he's a fan of a lot of Canadian bands. So number 7, you know, we're staying with the Canadian theme, and I talked about them in a couple of videos before. What was the last video? The Tea Party's Splendor Solace, which isn't their proper debut album, but of course the self-titled debut album featured some songs that were more re-recorded on this album, Splendor Solace. Super heavy, you know, Led Zeppelin 3 influence, very Middle Eastern at points. And the vocalist sounds like Jeff Martin. He's the guitarist too. They're power trio just like Rush. Sounds a lot like Jim Morrison at points. My favorites on this: The River, Midsummer Day, A Certain Slant of Light, very impassioned vocals. Kind of Black Sabbath-y. Winter Solstice, acoustic picking really works on that. Save Me, great acoustic riffs. Violin, sounds like he's playing a guitar and a violin bow. There's the Zeppelin influence, of course, because Jimmy Page did that, among others. Great climax on that song, Save Me. That may be my favorite song on here, actually. Sun Going Down has this twangy blues rock that builds. Jeff Martin does some screaming on that. He sounds a little bit like Chris Cornell. I mean, the more I listen to the Tea Party over the years, I was like, yeah, he kind of has a little bit of a Chris Cornell element. It's different. Some, like, kind of Chris Cornell meets Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison meets Chris Cornell in some ways, but... Dreams of Reason has the line, never gonna get it back, never gonna... It keeps on repeating that. Raven Skies, it's the line, welcome to my garden. It's a nice groove, using sitar towards the end. Haze on the Hills is instrumental. The Majestic song sounds like it reprises the River theme from the River's, I believe, the first track. You can see. But I think that's it for my notes. And you know something's never gonna change. It repeats that phrase at least 2 or 3 times in that song. The Majestics on the last track. But Yeah, I mean, it does. It's like, if you like Zeppelin, should not be listening to Greta Van Fleet or Wolfmother necessarily. I don't hate Wolfmother. Greta Van Fleet, to me, is a waste of time. Listen to this guy, this band. You get the Zeppelin influence in a cool way, and there are other records too. But yeah, I've been meaning to do a whole video on the Tea Party, and I need to someday. Maybe after this, I don't know, sometime soon. Maybe by sometime next year, if not sooner, I will sit down and, like I'm doing Pepe Deluxe and Small League Steam Ships and all these other bands, I'll do a whole feature, one album per video series on the Tea Party. I've revisited most of the records, and I can continue to do that, but because they have like 8 or 9 records, and they have a new album in the works, or something new in the works. It's coming later this year, likely. Number 6, we have Savatage, again, the first album with new lead vocalist Zachary Stevens, but it still features the original guitarist Chris Oliva. So, I mean, it's John Oliva just playing keyboards or piano, I guess, but Edge of Thorns. Very fantasy-like, reminds me of Genesis' like Fountain of Slow Matches in some ways. Produced by Paul O'Neill, the follow-up to Streets. I like this album much more than Streets, not only because of Zach Stevens, but just the writing on it. The title track is great. He Carves a Stone, All That I Bleed, Sleep, Degrees of Sanity. Zach is a star. He sounds like if James Hetfield sometimes were singing mostly clean to me. Like, not fully, with a little rasp, but not nearly as much. It's not doing, you know, like, not that sort of like, but, yeah, I don't know where they found him. He was in Florida too, though. But yeah, I've always loved this record. Not my favorite, but it's definitely in the top 3 or 4 Savatage albums. And a lot of people favor it because it has Zach Stevens and Chris Oliva, of course. Unfortunately, this is the last album with Chris Oliva. But Edge of Thorns. I mean, I didn't get around to revisiting it, but it's a record I've always enjoyed. So, number 5, top 5 now, top 5 time. The debut album from San Francisco, or the Bay Area's own neo-prog outfit, which had the services of one Steve Rothery from Marillion. Enchant, neo-prog, very Rush influence, very Kansas vocals influence with Ted Leonard, who of course later went on to be in Spock's Beard and sang with Transatlantic and those Pattern-Seeking Animals. Blueprint of the World. It features a guitar solo from Steve Rothery. I didn't initially like this album that much until I got the guys to sign. I saw them at Nearfest in 2002. That was a really big deal. See the sticker. I had the sticker on the CD. I brought this in. I bought it in '98. I brought it in to listen to. The whole Magna Carta thing, you know, that was the mid-'90s, mid to late '90s Magna Carta. I got to get this Magna Carta band, that Magna Carta band. Talked about Shadow God in the last video. Enchant was one of the other big Magna Carta acts, along with, like, you know, Liquid Tension Experiment, but and those tribute albums that Kevin Gilbert was on, some of them with the Yes, the Genesis ones, but Blueprint of the World, actually they were on, they mentioned that, they were on both the Yes, and they weren't on the Rush one, ironically, and then Rush is maybe their biggest influence, and they opened for Dream Theater later, so all these facts about Enchant I'm just spouting out, not even getting into the album. The Thirst is a great song about, the whole album is about relationships, but about a relationship where, like, some guy admires, I get goosebumps every time I hear it. Enchanted, Open Eyes, Nighttime Sky has always been a favorite. The keyboards are great. It's very reminiscent of, like, doing kind of Marillion style, you could say slightly AOR influence, but neo-prog. But it's heavy enough, and it's not plasticky enough, because it sounds 90s enough, although, and the drummer, Paul Craddock, is amazing. At Death's Door, East of Eden, the whole record just is, I had friends I used to hang out with on Mike Portnoy's chat room that were just worshipped this album to the ground. I mean, I totally see it, and among Enchant's catalog, I love a lot of their albums. It's still, push comes to shove, probably my favorite. I have so much nostalgia from, like, the late 90s and early 2000s. I'd be depressed and I'd put this on, it would always make me feel better. So, yeah, Enchant's Blueprint of the World. Awesome record. If you've never heard Enchant, it's a very good place to start. I mean, it's going to sound kind of neo-prog-like. It's going to have that kind of Marillion, say IQ or whatever, some of that element, and some of, like, you know, like Ted Leonard's voice sounds kind of like Steve Walsh from Kansas, but there's enough, you know, punch in the writing and emotion, and, you know, I don't know. People that love Enchant really love them. Tiles, I would compare them to. I think I like them more than Tiles. Not by a lot, but I do like them more than Tiles, so. Number 5, Enchant, Blueprint of the World. That's why I have it on vinyl and, you know, the CD, of course. Number 4, the debut album. So we had the debut album from I, Mother Earth. The debut album, a couple of No Man, and a couple of Jim Matheos in a way, sort of. Anecdotin'. Without Warning. But Angels Cry. Angra, Brazil's own Angra, you know, Andre Matos fronted. There's the picture of the band. Kind of like mix it. James Bickers wrote an article about some albums that are good for people not into prog metal to get into prog metal. It's like taking classical music and making it heavy and metal in some ways, but not like Yngwie Malmsteen sort of going up the scales, doing kind of, you know, just kind of chromatic runs. They do some classical, big classical influence on a lot of this, but the best songs are like Angels Cry, the title track rather, of course, Carry On, that the line, so carry on, there's a meaning to life, someday we may find, but Andre's just impassioned falsettos. It's why he's my favorite singer, one of my top 4 singers ever. Time is the other kind of super favorite of mine on this album. It's got some horns on and stuff, and those riffs that and like sort of call and response dynamics. The energy is just off the... Angra was a band that said, we can play really fast and melodic. I mean, they had an influence from Halloween and power metal too. You could say like Blind Guardian and some others. But they had some prog in them too, you know, and their debut album is well-liked. It has a cover of Wuthering Heights, which Toe Hider, of course, did a cover of the Kate Bush song. I think Andre's is slightly better, as much as I like Toe Hider's version. Streets of Tomorrow, Evil Warning, the use of sort of vocal kind of like little overdubs where Andre, he just put these little like vocal parts like when he's just singing normally, he just kind of goes into falsetto. He's not talking, but it's an overdub, almost like another singer, but it's just him. I mean, it's not exactly a Queen, Freddie Mercury thing, but it's very unique. I've never heard anything like that. But yeah, I love Angra, the early Angra albums with Andre Matos, and Angels Cry is right up there. Excellent debut album. I know it's on vinyl, but it'll cost me an arm and a leg to get well over $100. But someday they need to reissue it, hopefully soon. That and all their early records. So number 4. Number 3, the big debut, another debut album. So we got like 6 or 7 debut albums on this list. The big debut album from Cynic, which I actually have, well, Paul Masvidal and I don't know if it was Sean Malone or Sean Reinert who signed the late. Both of them are passed away, unfortunately, but I haven't signed the vinyl. Focus. This is, while you could say Death, and I don't know if Death had an album this year. Death, Dissection, you know, and you could go back to Watchtower, of course. The technical metal stuff came before them. This is sort of, to me, it came in all, you know, sort of hit on all cylinders, and also Atheist. They kind of hit on all the cylinders from a composition standpoint. We can do jazzy stuff with really technical and like processed vocals, which sound like nothing we've ever heard before, and it works. Veil of Maya, there's a band that named themselves after that track. Sentiment, Roberic Forms, Textures, another band that I don't think that Textures got their name from this as well. The Eagle Nature, I'm But a Wave Too. I mean, the whole thing flows so well, kind of like Enchant's Blueprint of the World, or a Porcupine Tree Sky Moves, or Porcupine Tree's Up the Down Stair. The whole record to me is just a flow of sort of really kind of technical, you know, technical riffage with kind of atmospheric jazzy elements with dynamics. It just works. It really was ahead of its time, and unfortunately, I can't say I ever got into any Cynic record as much as this. I do like some of the other records, but you know, this is where it's at. And of course, it was a long wait. It was like 15 years for the follow-up. But yeah, I mean, Sean Malone, Sean Reinert, Paul Masvidal, yeah, they were great. You know, this album was great. Focus. That's why it's at number 3. Number 2, love this album. Begging for a vinyl issue of it. Galactic Cowboys, Space Interface, the sophomore album, the follow-up from the self-titled debut. This is a tour de force of like Metallica meets the Beatles, meets grunge in a really cool, fun, playful way. They were just space in your face. I do what I do. Blind, no problems. There's just so many melodies and riffs, and just the energy's off the charts. Of course, there's the hidden tracks on this, Ranch on Mars, and I forget the other one, but produced by Sam Taylor, just like the first album. Circle in the Fields. Of course, it has Dane Sonnier, which after this album he would leave, and then he would rejoin for their reunion album. But I love this album to death. It's a perfect record to me. It's just I mean, they opened for King's X the first two times I saw King's X, and I liked them, but this album just continued to grow on me. I just loved it more and more. The detuned guitar, but they're doing what King's X did, but they did it heavier and thrashier. And Ben Huggins has a decent voice. I mean, he's kind of screaming sometimes, but he's still in key. He doesn't have, I mean, you know, in the harmonies, they were obviously Beatles fans. That's the thing that's cool. It's like, here's a band that's doing grunge or thrashy kind of grunge, but also are Beatles fans. They had like piano and a few songs and some other instruments. What's the other? I forget what the track. I didn't write it down. The one of the hidden track, Ranch on Mars, and the other one are two of my favorites. I'm not gonna look in the book here because it'll. Oh yeah, that's right. If I look it up on Discogs, it's an underrated track. What's it called? Still Life of Peace. Still Life of Peace. They would do Ranch on Mars Part 2, I think. If I'm not mistaken, but anyway. So number one, what do you think it is? Of course. And I screwed up in the 1990 video because I said it was this album. The 1990 video was was Belly Button, which I have right over here, right down here. Pull that up. Belly Button. Where is it? I'm gonna find the J's down here actually. 3 times. This was the 1990 album Belly Button, not Spilt Milk. Jellyfish's Spilt Milk. You know, initially I liked Jelly Button a little more. Here's one CD, the pink. But no, I came to kind of grips. Everyone loves this album. And it's like, yeah, this is a masterpiece. Roger Manny and Andy Sturmer were just butting heads, just pulling out their hair, trying to finish this thing. After Jason Faulkner left the band, some of the other members had turned over. But Sabrina Paste and Play-Doh and New Mistakes, an absolute Stone Cold classic, even though it wasn't around. They didn't catch on at the time. It's become a cult classic. There's so many other songs on here. Glutton of Sympathy, Ghost of Number One. How does it feel to be the only one that knows you're right? Yeah, I know that line quite well. Russian Hill. The latter half, Brighter Days, kind of that march, that kind of parade. I think of Grand Parade of Life, but Life is from Genesis, Grand Parade of Lifeless, whatever it's called, Packaging. When I hear that, but they were obviously influenced by the Beatles, the Beach Boys, ELO, Badfinger, Queen, big Queen influence. Joining a fan club was a massive. That was about being a fan of the Beatles, being a Beatles fan club member, in effect. The production is just pristine. There's so many layers on this. It's so well mixed. Everything in the kitchen sink. It's like Bye 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 was a catchy track. I love Belly Button, but they kind of, from an ambitious standpoint, they kind of upped their game with this record, even though they spent, like I said, so many hours in the studio. It was kind of like, Brian Wilson, making, what's it called? Making Good Vibrations, or trying to make Smile, or like, was it 10cc is another band, 10cc making that's with all those extra tracks, that song that was their big hit, I'm Still in Love. But yeah, I mean, it's foolish if you've never heard Jellyfish's Spilt Milk and you like 60s and 70s sort of psychedelic power pop with progressively. It's an obvious thing, and they influence a lot of bands, and no band has ever come up with a record of this kind of finding all these areas is good. I mean, you could say Pepe Deluxe is Queen of the Wave. You could say Receiving and Sirens. What's it called? I can't think of the name right now. You could say Apes and Angra. There's a lot of albums that have come since, but there's just something about this record that's special, and it's just kind of, it's aged like a fine wine, really. So, anyway, that was 1993. They played at First Avenue, and I didn't know who they were, of course. So, the weird thing about this album is when I first heard it, I heard people were suggesting Portnoy, of course, too. I got both the Jellyfish albums. That was just sort of okay, and I thought the thing with the girl on the cover was a little like, is this kids' music? Eventually I discovered a couple years later, it's like, no. But anyway, so that's my list from 1993. I don't know if 1994 is going to come next week. I have a couple days off, but there's a holiday, of course, and my birthday. But I have all this stuff from the year 2024 to still catch up on, and plus Monday, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make a video, so how much prep I'm going to be doing. But thank you for watching. Please give me your list of your favorite albums from 1993. Christian, of course, will give me the 25 I'm missing. Thank you, Christian, and we'll see you next time.